Oh, goody.
Alright, what's up everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Hearthstone video. So doing something a little bit different today. Yesterday, played a bunch of Wild on stream for the release of the expansion, and I actually had a really good time. I wasn't really enjoying where the format was prior to the expansion, but the expansion's really breathed a lot of life into the format, a lot of new, interesting, fun decks to mess around with. So I wanted to share some of those with you, as I know we do have a fair bit of people who do enjoy the Wild format. So I wanted to share decks I had a lot of fun and pretty decent success with on day one. So we're going to get right on into it here. Before we do, if you enjoy this type of content, do remember to like and subscribe. It does a ton to help out the channel and keeps the videos coming. Yeah, we're going to get right on into it. Merc stuff will be resuming as always this week, but unfortunately, if you haven't already heard, there is a bug with Sir Finley's task line. So they actually currently disabled it, which is something they've never done before, so that's a little strange. But Finley's task 2 is bugged. It was uncompletable, so I guess they temporarily disabled it while they work on a hotfix to it. That is one of the reasons I haven't been able to power through and get up my Finley to try out in PvP, because I only have a handful of coins for him, so might be waiting a little bit longer on that one, unfortunately, until we can get that bug resolved. But yeah, let's take a look at the decks here. We have 4 main decks that I've been playing on release and had pretty decent success with all of them. First one here, and probably my favorite, is Miracle Rogue. Now, there are a few different versions of this going around. Some people are doing the Null Sonya package, which also seems to be pretty good. But I prefer this version. This is from Cubby. I'll have a link in the description to where I tweeted this out, referencing all the deck builders. But this deck is really, really fun. If you enjoy old school Miracle Rogue, this is the deck for you. You can get some insanely huge Edwins, and the location here, Sinstone Graveyard, is an absolutely insane card. It's probably one of my favorite cards they printed in a long time. Really, really like this card. And the Serrated Bone Spike, also super duper good. The fact that if you kill a minion with this, it makes your next card cost 2 less, and that's not a restriction on spells or minions or combo or whatever. Really, really insane for getting a big pop-off combo turn. And then we have the new Legendary as another payoff, so we aren't just all in on Edwin. We can also go all in on a really big dagger to just kill the opponent with. Another cool card that made it into the list, only one of, but Door of Shadows. So you draw a spell, infuse 2, you get a temporary copy of it to your hand. Most of the time that infuse isn't going off, but it actually did go off a handful of times and was kind of useful, but it's mainly there just as an additional combo piece and some more draw. But yeah, really, really like this deck. You enjoy Miracle Rogue style decks, this is definitely one I would recommend, and players do seem to be putting up good results with both this and the Sonya Null version of the list. Moving on to Implock from EPT Hopper, and this is one I really wasn't expecting to be that great, but it just is really good. Like, it does some pretty nuts things. So obviously Wild has a lot of old imps here. Like, we have the 0 mana Desk Imp. We have cards like Wicked Shipment. They're just a lot of decent imp cards in Wild that are fairly low cost, which makes Vile Library a pretty insane stat buff. This is very much a zoo-like deck. If you enjoy spamming the board with small things and smorking your opponent down pretty quickly, this is probably the deck for you. The imps have been surprisingly good. They're seeing a lot of play right now. Mischievous Imp also been really, really good because it's pretty easy to get that infuse 3. And then you don't always get to play Imp King Rafam, but when you do, it feels really good. You use him basically like a Savage Roar sometimes, as well as just generating a whole board if you got recently cleared. So if you like zoo-esque style decks, like maybe like the old Discard Lock, I think this is definitely a better version of that. So definitely recommend checking that one out. Again, all the codes for these will be in the description. And we have Totem Shaman. I think this was by Gumby, if I recall correctly. But yeah, this one's really cool. So we're not even going even because there are more cards across mana costs that we want. But we are making use of a really cool card here, and this is kind of an older one, the Grand Totem Izor. So it's such a weird card, but it's actually really sweet because we have so much totem synergy in the deck. And we did get a new totem that is surprisingly good for the archetype. The Sinstone totem really just like keeps scaling itself up, and then when you get the buffs going, it gets pretty insane. On top of that, we got a new weapon, the Carving Chisel. So more ways to summon the basic totems, which are the bread and butter of this deck, especially with things like our Totemic Might and Totemic Surge to buff them up. So those are really quite fun. On top of that, we got a new legendary as well, the Stone Right. This card's been pretty good, decent tempo play, and again, it's kind of like a little Savage Roar with a body because our whole deck is totem based. And then we did also get the Giant or Giganta Totem. So Totem Giant, basically. Fun card, really dig this. Just love the overall totem synergy. It feels like the deck is kind of finally having enough different synergy where it can exist, especially outside of just being even shaman. Splitting Axe also just got way better with the new totems we got. Like if you can copy the Giganta Totem and just get another one of those, which is pretty insane, or copy up the Grand Totem, or even just your totems that you've buffed already. Feels really good. And we also are running things like Devolve and the Flurgle Tox package just to help deal with opposing boards, because this is a very board-centric deck, and you do kind of go a little all-in, as once you don't really have a great amount of refill typically, so you do want to be careful about that. But again, if you enjoy kind of mid-range style board-based decks, this is definitely one I would recommend to you. And then the last deck I'm going to showcase here is Enrage Warrior. This one's coming from Reno Jackson. And I'll be honest, I did not think Warrior was going to be playable this expansion. I thought Warrior just wasn't going to be good. But the fact that there are a lot of board-based decks running around right now in Wild means that there's actually a reason to play this. And it feels pretty good. So we're using the new location here. This one has a huge amount of new cards. Probably one of the biggest important ones here is Anima Extractor. Whenever a friendly minion takes damage, give a random minion in your hand +1/+1. This card is nuts. Like, you can get so many stats. And even the first time reading it, I didn't realize it wasn't just itself, it's any of your other minions. So it can actually really crank out some stats, especially when you combo it with things like Risky Skipper or the new Animated Berserker. Now with this one, another really good card here is Imbued Axe. This card is just way more solid than I expected it to be. Even if you don't get the infuse off, it's still good. But if you do get the infuse off, it's like really nuts. And the legendaries, surprisingly, both warrior legendaries have been good in this deck. So we have Decimator Olgra. Battlecry, gain +1/+1 for each damage minion, and then attack all enemies. Really easy to have friendly or damaged minions in this deck, or on the field, whether they're on your side or your opponent's. Happens a lot. And this gives us kind of a way to win back the board, or if we're behind, and act as like a pretty big board clear, especially if you've got some stats on it from some of our other stat buffs too. So really been surprisingly impressed with this card. And the other card I've also been really impressed with has been Remornia, the Living Blade. This card is so cool. I really love the design on it, but I thought it was going to be way too slow. But it turns out it's really not, at least so far in my experience with it. And it's definitely saved me some games. The fact that you can just get it buffed up in hand while it's sitting in your hand, but then it comes down, you get a rush in with it, you get to attack in with it, and then you get a rush in again, and then it ends the turn as just sitting back as a weapon, is so cool and surprisingly powerful. I really like this card, and I'm just really surprised that it's seeing play at all, much less that it's actually like doing well, at least in my experience with it. This is another deck that I think will take a bit to be fully refined, but I really do like it in its current version and have had a pretty decent amount of success with it. It's probably the deck I played most yesterday. Crazed Wretch is also a really good card in this list. The fact that we have a source of charge damage that also helps us interact with the board a bit and cares about what the deck is trying to do already, which is damage itself and whatnot. Just really good. This is probably the deck that has the most new cards, I think. Maybe tied with Rogue. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check. But if you're looking for something to play that's Warrior and has kind of a tempo-y play style, especially if you're running into a lot of other board-based decks, this actually does pretty well against board-based decks, especially stuff like Pirate Rogue and whatnot. So definitely recommend this deck. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, those are my top 4 day 1 wild decks. Like I said, I've been really enjoying the expansion a lot more than I expected to. So definitely recommend giving this a try if you have any of these cards. Fair warning, it is early on. Nobody knows how the meta is going to totally settle out. So if you're a little more strapped on dust, I don't recommend necessarily crafting anything before you see the results. But out of all these decks, I think if you want to safe craft something that will probably be good even when the meta gets figured out, I think Miracle Rogue and Implock are probably the 2 best ones out of these 4, but the other ones are totally playable and can win you some games as well. But yeah, that is going to wrap it up for this video. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you've been checking out the expansion, how you've been liking it, if there's any cool decks that you've been enjoying. Love to see all that stuff. And more Merc stuff should be resuming tomorrow, hopefully, is the goal. So keep an eye out for that. Again, we are doing a custom Merc contest giveaway. So 2 winners will be getting the Tavern Pass. You will have more information about that in the description if you aren't already aware of it. Lets you know how you can submit and all that stuff. And we will be pulling the winners for those on our next episode of the podcast this weekend. So keep an eye out for that. And best of luck to everyone who made a submission. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, do remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.